Welcome to our Bible discussions here on DWH, the World of Hope channel. This week we will focus on Jesus, author and perfecter of our faith. Our main focus this week is going to be on faith. And with me on set today is Sister Success Uwani.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
Thank you so much for coming. Faith is something that we all know and we talk about all the time. But as we delve into today's lesson, we want to be talking about Jesus as the very author and the perfecter of our faith, because we are people that came to have faith. In short, last week we actually talked about Jesus being the one that opens the veil for us to come into the very presence of God. And we saw that without Jesus we will not even have that access to God's presence. But this week our memory test is taken from the book of Hebrews chapter 12 verse 2. I want us to please look at that. Hebrews chapter 12 verse 2. The Bible says, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and has sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Now, Hebrews chapter 11 and 12, I think it's one of the most interesting chapters in the book of Hebrews. People will always talk about the Hall of Fame and how those that we also always talk about the Hall of Faith, where we see our forefathers who have actually walked the road. Christianity is like a race, as the writer of Hebrews tried to put it. It's like a race, and we are all running this race. And those others have run before us, okay?
Yes,
and now they have transferred the baton to us, and we are to finish the race. When the writer of Hebrews is talking about Jesus as the author and the perfecter of our faith, what is he trying to bring to our understanding?
The writer of the book of Hebrews trying to let us know that Jesus has been there right from the beginning of time. So he actually knows what faith is all about. And because he has come, he has actually finished the race. So therefore he is the perfecter, because it's only in him that he started it, and he has been able to end the race of faith. So he alone is the author and the perfecter of faith.
So, and we see in the same the book of Hebrews chapter 12 verse 2, he says that he is now sitting at the right hand of the throne of God. So we think you begin to see that Jesus actually finished the race and he has won the prize. But the book of Hebrews also made us to understand that even those that have run the race before us, like Abraham, like Moses, like Noah, they have not actually received the reward, but they believe that they will receive the reward. And we are the ones that they are waiting for to receive the reward together. So it's like the book of Hebrews is trying to tell us that Jesus Christ is the one that we look up to, believing that, see, it's going to actually come to pass because someone has won, and we can see the evidence that someone has won. But what does this have to do with faith? What is faith all about? How does the book of Hebrews define faith?
Hebrews 11 verse 1, I would go to the NIV version. We have there that faith is the confidence in what we hope for and the assurance about what we do not see. So here it is a better explanation here, because we see faith as you're not seeing this, but you have this belief, you have this confidence that this thing, I am going to get it. So, but then the King James Version said it is the substance. Now faith, King James Version of Hebrews 11 verse 1. Now faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. So here we see substance and evidence playing key here. So substance of things meaning, oh, this thing, it's cherished. That's a substance. Substance is something that you value it. The substance of things hoped for. Now the evidence of things not seen. You don't need to. Let me put it this way. You are seeing it, but there is a target, there is a goal. You're seeing the evidence of this thing I am hoping for. These are the evidence.
So we begin to see that faith is not just something that has to do with the mind or just the brain. It also has to do with our actions, because you believe in something that you have not seen. But rather, you also have the hope that is going to be a reality, even when you do not actually see all the evidences playing out. When looking at the Bible, in Hebrews chapter 10, verse 35 through 39, Paul was actually trying to encourage the ones that he's writing to, and also writing to us today, encourage us that we should not cast away our confidence because of the suffering and persecutions and the things we see. But he makes a comment there, and I want us to look at that comment carefully. He said, the righteous or the just shall live by faith. What does it mean when he uses that word, the just shall live by faith?
Habakkuk chapter 2, verse 3.
2 to 4.
Okay, we're going to start from verse 2 to 4. And the Lord answered me and said, write the vision and make it plain upon tables, that he may run that readeth it. For the vision is yet for an appointed time, but at the end of it shall speak and not lie. Though it tarry, wait for it, because it will surely come, it will not tarry. Behold, his soul, which is lifted up, is not upright in him, but the just shall live by his faith. So here we'll see that you're hoping for something, so you have to believe in that thing you're hoping for. If you don't believe in it, then you can't actually get it. You can't be expecting to have money when you're not hoping that, or you're not doing anything to give you that money. So you're hoping that, okay, yes, Christ will come. We're hoping for the coming of Christ. Christ will come. So what are the things I need to do for the coming of Christ? So I have to walk towards it, because I have a hope that this I am going to get, the crown I am going to get. So that's, you have to continuously believe in God and believe that, yes, this thing is going to be. So that is why when Paul uses the word, the just shall live by faith, what he is just trying to tell us there is that you cannot say you are righteous when you don't have faith. So you have to have faith for you to be righteous.
Looking at the background to what happened to Habakkuk, because he is the one that makes this statement. Okay, and it says that the righteous shall live by his faith. That is the faith that he or she has in God. That is the avenue by which they will live. Now, I just want to bring out this aspect. We should not forget that Paul is writing to the Hebrews in the same situation that Habakkuk found himself. Because Habakkuk was actually complaining to God. And as he was complaining and saying, God, why are you allowing us to suffer? Why are you allowing us to be tortured by the heathens? We know you are more powerful than they are. Why don't you judge them and give us freedom? And then God answered and said, write down the vision. Do not worry. It might tarry. It might take some time, but you have to wait. You have to learn how to be patient, because the just, the righteous will live by faith. So I think when Paul is saying, when the writer of Hebrews is saying that the just shall live by faith, he's actually trying to say that we need to learn how to trust in God. And if we say that we are Christians and then we do not trust God enough to be able to have that patience, to have that endurance, for us to wait for something to come, then there is nothing for us to write home about. Because Paul is also trying to tell his audience that, see, the just will live by faith. It is by faith that we will live. So faith is part of the Christian experience. I think that's what he's trying to say. Yeah. That faith is part of the Christian experience. Now, I want to ask, how is faith supposed to affect us as Christians? As in, what is faith in the real sense? Because many people say, I have faith in God. I believe, I claim it. And this is what we hear today. Yeah. But what is faith? What is Paul trying to tell us that faith is all about? Even mostly when he says that the righteous shall live by faith.
Okay. Well, I think rather what Paul is trying to say there is that faith is not just a proclamation. It's an action word. It's something you have to do on a daily basis. You have to keep believing on a daily basis that there is God. I trust in Him, and I hope to get there someday. So that is what Paul is just trying to make us to understand. Not just the proclamation that we hear today. It's an action. We have to act it out.
I think what we actually need to understand is the fact that faith is not just an exceptional act. You know, sometimes we say, "Oh, I have faith that God is going to heal me," and then God heals me, and then that is it. But I think Paul is trying to say that the righteous have to live by faith in the sense that faith is something that has to do with a lifetime,
Yes,
a daily basis. You know, you have to just live it. It's part of your life. Let's look at the life of Abraham, because the book of Hebrews begins to open our eyes to the heroes of faith and how they lived their lives. And let me ask, when God called Abraham to come out of his father's house and then go to a place where he did not know, with the kind of expression and the way Abraham actually walked with God, with all the promises that God gave to Abraham, how does the life of Abraham actually opens our eyes to what faith really is?
See, Abraham, I wouldn't want to say he had an exceptional faith, no. But then, because of his continuous experience with God, first and foremost, God asked him to leave his father's house, which he left, and he has seen that God has never failed in his promises towards him. To crown it all, God promised him a son. And at the end, he said, sacrifice the son. To some of us today, we'll be like, God, you're wicked. How would you say I should sacrifice the gift you have given to me? But he has seen God working in diverse ways. So here, he said, well, if he can give me this son at this age, if he can supersede science, if he can supersede medicine, then who am I not to sacrifice this son? Because I believe that he would definitely raise him from the dead. So that was the belief Abraham had, that if he sacrifices his son, that God would raise him from dead, because he gave him the son. So he would not just ordinarily take him away from him. After all, he has promised that Isaac was the heir to the promise, and from Isaac there are going to be generations of generations. So he knew that God would not fail in his promises towards him.
So we cannot say that the faith of Abraham was quite practical.
Yes.
Because in Hebrews chapter 11 verse 19, the Bible actually says that he believed that God was going to resurrect Isaac, as you brought the idea of Isaac out. I was just thinking about that. He said that after all, God gave me Isaac figuratively as good as dead. So if he dies again, of course, God is going to resurrect him. Let's not forget that at the time that Isaac was given to Abraham, Abraham was past the age of As at the time that God gave Isaac to Abraham, Sarah has passed the age of childbearing, and Abraham was already good as dead. He was weak. He didn't have any strength in him again. But now we see that this child has grown up, and he has taken more years. If Sarah was like 99, she's now like 100, and Abraham is already clocking 100 and something. They are becoming older, and then God is saying, give me the child. And the book of Hebrews makes us to understand that Abraham actually believed that God was going to resurrect Isaac.
Yeah.
And that's the reason why he said, okay, if God gives me this, he will be able to give it back to me.
Of course.
Why? How did he get to that point? What led him to be able to get to that point? Because today we are often told that let's forget the past. Let's forget the past. Let's not focus on the past. But I believe that Abraham must have the past experience that Abraham must have had with God. Don't you think it has affected the way he actually related with God?
Okay. Well, forgetting the past, I would say, has nothing to do with remembering God's promises to us, or rather God's faithfulness, God's leading in our lives. So in as much as we want to forget the past, we shouldn't forget the things that God has done for us in the past. Because it is only when we trust, when we go back to the past, when we remember the past, okay, God has done this for me. He promised me this in time past and He fulfilled it. Meaning that He is going to do more in the future and will help me in my present walk with Him. So, in as much as we want to forget the past, we should not forget what God has done for us in the past, because it is only in that that we can put our trust in Him for the future and as well as the present.
One thing I've also experienced is this. One thing I've beginning to notice in the pattern of what God is talking about to us, what God is trying to express to us about faith, is the fact that they are all based on God's promises. Mm-hmm. And the reason why Abraham was able to have that faith in God and in His promise to that point, I think it should be based on the faithfulness of God. Yeah. The lesson was trying to make us to understand that God's faithfulness actually resulted to Abraham having more faith in God. Yeah. For example, if both of us have like a truce, we talk about something and you told me that I have to do something for you, and I failed, and I failed again, and I failed again, and I failed again. There's a probability that you will not believe me the next time I give you an assurance. Exactly. But if I always come through, if I always come through in what I always tell you, and then when I say something new, it is easier for you to believe than, and I think that's what actually happened with the relationship between God and Abraham. Yeah. Because you see God actually telling Abraham, I'm going to do this, he did it. I'm going to do this, he did it. I'm going to do it. Okay, Abraham's okay. Now I'm saying, give me your son. Abraham's okay. This is hard, but I think I'm going to do this for you because I know you can resurrect my son, because I have had this time to trust God. So we begin to understand that faith is not just believing, it's actually trying to trust God. So you have confidence and you trust God that since He has said this and He has done it before, He can do it again. And let's look at the life of Moses and how he portrayed faith. One other aspect of what the writer of Hebrews actually told us about faith is that we have this confidence or assurance of things we have not seen. The assurance of things not seen. How is this assurance of things not seen actually portrayed in the life of Moses? Because the Bible actually told us about Moses as a person of faith. How is this portrayed in the life of Moses?
Well, we see here in the life of Moses a very, very dicey lifestyle. Because Moses, we all know, was born, and we know about his upbringing. He was thrown in the river because of the decree to kill all male child. And then Pharaoh's daughter picked him up. And then we see the mother coming to ask, okay, let me help in the training of this child. Ordinarily, having known first and foremost that he is Pharaoh's daughter's child, he would have said, okay, since this is where I belong, let me be here. No. But he didn't say that. Rather, he chose a lifestyle that was so contrary to where he was supposed to belong. So contrary. So he wanted to belong to God. He wanted to have faith in Him. And we see him doing things that they were like, I thought this is a child of Pharaoh's daughter. So why is he acting contrary to the Egyptians? So we see faith. And we also see where good upbringing comes into place. Like we see in Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 8. Okay, I will read from verse 6 to 8. And these words which I command thee this day shall be in thine heart, and thou shalt teach them diligently unto thy children, and shalt talk of them when thou sittest in thine house, and when thou walkest by the way, and when thou liest down, and when thou risest up, and thou shalt bind them for a sign upon thine hand, and they shall be as frontlets between thine eyes. So we see our focus here is on verse 7. We see, I believe, the kind of upbringing Moses had from his mother. His mother made sure to teach him, to tell him, there is a God, and it is that God that saved you. So you have to trust in Him. Whatever you do should be to please Him and to honor Him. So even coming to a life of affluence and everything, he still chose to stand for God. So we see him having faith in God. He doesn't know anything. He has not seen this God. He doesn't really know anything about this God. But because of that upbringing he had this faith that there is a God of my people, and I have to stand for him.
In Hebrews chapter 11, verse 24 and 25,
Okay.
the Bible explained that Moses refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And he actually chose to suffer with the children of
that.
Israel. Now, I want to ask, is it not sensible for us to say, okay, why don't he just become the king of Egypt,
Okay.
the Pharaoh of Egypt, and then save the children of Israel?
Mm-hmm.
Because this act, should I put it as this act of defiance to the king of Egypt, actually came from Moses' idea of the promises that have been made to Israel.
Mm-hmm.
These are promises.
Mm-hmm.
He has not seen it.
Mm-hmm.
The evidence of it happening is bleak.
Mm-hmm.
It's not evidence that anything
No,
can happen
exactly.
today to save the children of Israel from slavery.
Mm-hmm.
Yet he chose to suffer with them, to be insulted, to be ridiculed, to be hunted like an animal. And yet, he was able to stand by this and not say to himself, I can still be the king of Egypt, then bring everything to pass. Why didn't he do that? Why didn't he do that?
Let's not forget the words of Jesus in the book of John 16, verse 33. It reads here, "These things I have spoken unto you, that in me ye might have peace. In the world ye shall have tribulation. Be of good cheer, I have overcome the world." See here, Moses understanding, or rather having understood the fact that this race is not a bed of roses. It's not going to be rosy for me. No, I really have to pass through thorns. I really have to pass through trials and tribulation for me to do this, because Christ has already promised. In the world, we are going to have tribulations, but we should be of good cheer because he has overcome the world. So he was already being taught that forget that we are passing through these trials. What we are looking at is the prize ahead. So we have to pass through it. We have to endure it for us to get to that prize.
Is it not easy for us to sometimes say, oh Lord, when I get to that position, I will do the right thing. When I get that certificate, I will do this. When I get this job, let me just get the job and gather some money. When I've gathered the money, then I will build a church for you, Lord. I will do this. So sometimes we do deceive ourselves with that. But Moses did not actually get to that point where he is deceived by what he's seeing. Because it's easy for him to have said, okay, I am the next in line to Pharaoh. And I can become the king of Egypt and then reverse everything. Now he has the power. And it sounds logical.
Yes.
But we see that in the book of Hebrews chapter 11, there is a point that was made. He said that he looked for the reward. He looked to the reward.
Yes.
And the reward is not earthly. That he chose to ignore the passing pleasures of the world. And then he said he endured because he was seeing him that was invisible. The person is invisible, yet he's seeing him that is invisible. So we begin to see what faith, the action of faith there. So Moses, having not been able to understand all the promises of God, having not seen the evidence of how God is going to bring this promise of the children of Israel to pass, he was still able to say, okay, look, I want to stand on God's path. I want to do what God says I will do. And it does not matter what happens. Okay, so for some of us, sometimes we have to actually understand that what the lesson is trying to say is that faith is not something that frees you from facing challenges.
Exactly.
It is actually the challenges that actually teaches us how to have faith in God.
Exactly.
Because when Paul was saying that the righteous shall live by faith, and then we read the book of Habakkuk chapter 2, it actually said, wait, endure. So faith comprises of endurance, it comprises of waiting, it comprises of patience. We have to be patient enough. And we also see this, apart from Moses, we also see this Rahab story as Joshua, a man of faith, was to fight and then see what was going on in the land of Jericho. The Bible says they had this contact with this woman called Rahab. How is faith also exemplified in her life?
Okay. The story of Rahab is another very interesting story. Here we see a woman who we know her to be a harlot. That's what the Bible made us to understand, that Rahab was a harlot by profession. But then, even in her harlotry, she trusted, or rather, she was trusting in this God. Would I say she wasn't deriving pleasure in what she was doing any longer? She wanted to break free, but this is the only work she knows how to do, and she doesn't know how to break free. She trusted in God. She was trusting in God. She was learning about this God who has saved these people in time past. And in her mind of mind, she was like, how can I belong to these people? How can I belong to this God who have led these people thus far? And then the opportunity came for her. And she grabbed it with all her heart. And so we see here a woman who, she hasn't seen God. It's just the stories she heard about him. That God has led us, he rained down manna from heaven, he did this, he did that. And when the opportunity came, she just grabbed it. I have been wanting to break free. I have been wanting to belong to this God. So this is my opportunity. So normally, even when she asked Joshua and Caleb that, okay, what we should do to be saved and all that, and they were like, okay, just throw down
Just hang a piece.
Just hang a piece of thread, and when we see it, don't worry, whatever wants to happen would happen. But then, if it's someone like me, I would be like, just a thread, how is that supposed to save me and my family and all that? But she trusted in God. So we should always learn to trust God. Faith is practical rather than logical. It's not what we are thinking it to be. We should rather act it out.
Now, talking about Rahab, as you said, rightly said, Hebrews chapter 11 verse 31 actually made reference to her. And then it says that by faith the harlot Rahab did not perish with those who did not believe. You see, they did not believe. And then when she received the spies with peace, she received the spies with peace. So you see, even Rahab became part of those that actually became the generation that brought Christ to pass. So you begin to see that faith actually transformed her life. We begin to see that faith is not just something we say, I have faith, I trust in God. But faith is supposed to have an effect even in the way we live. Even, because we see that I believe that Rahab was no longer a harlot because she married a man from the tribe of Israel who later gave birth to Obed, who later gave birth to Jesse, who later gave birth to David, and then we get to Jesus Christ today. Faith was the very catalyst that transformed this harlot into someone that became the very progenitor of Christ. Now we look at how Jesus becomes the very perfecter and the author of our faith. Because looking at all these people, we know that, okay, we need to have faith. We need to trust God. If God has been faithful to these people, then certainly He will be faithful to us. But how does looking unto Jesus help us to run this race no matter what happens?
I would want us to read the Bible actually. Hebrews 12 verse 1 and 2. Okay, we'll read to 3, right, actually. Wherefore, seeing we also are compassed about with so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and the sin which doth so easily beset us, and let us run with patience the race that is set before us, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and is set down at the right hand of the throne of God. For consider him that endured such contradiction of sinners against himself, lest ye be wearied and faint in your minds. So the Bible has actually given us an answer to this question. We have to look unto him because he has come, he has suffered all these things, and he is now sitting at the right hand of the throne of God, meaning he has finished everything. He has perfected everything. So we have to look to him. We have to run the race with patience, looking to him. Okay, if you can do this and have finished it and has gotten to the finishing line and have been rewarded, then I can as well do the same. So that is why the Bible says we should look unto him, who is the author and the finisher of our faith.
Friends, isn't it wonderful for us to understand and begin to see how Jesus is the very author and the finisher of our faith? You know, I like the last part. He said, you see, Jesus faced so much hostility. He faced so much trouble. He was despised. He was afflicted. And he died a shameful death. He said, but he has finished the race and is sitting by God's own throne. So we should look unto him as the one that has finished this race. But then he says, lest you become discouraged. Don't be discouraged. Think of Jesus. Then you will know that what you are going through is just for a while. As it is said, that troubles have their own expiry dates. But let me tell you something. The faith that we have in Christ does not have an expiry date, because that reward is great and is everlasting. Hold on to your faith. Christ is the very vision. He is the very is the portrait. Christ is the portrait of our faith. He is what it means to have faith. Abraham has his fault. Moses had his fault. Rahab had her fault. But thank God for Jesus. He is perfect and he is good. I pray that God will make you as you hold on to your confidence in God. God bless you.